All right, so we are doing the scale and space project, manipulations of our point of view and our space, how we line shots up, and how we frame them, and how we focus. And so I bring them on from my card. I made a folder here for my scale and space exposures. Put them here. And just to kind of show you, I guess, what we were going for, I can use these three to show, because I was using an unknowing bystander. So this one, the focus works okay. The scale is definitely nice, but the lineup isn't good, right? Because you have clearly visible this transition of planar space that they're standing on. So that was my first shot, and then by this shot I was able to line it up better so that they both feel like they have shadows, and so they feel like they're on equal ground, and the focus is better between all three of them. I wish he were over here, but it works. And so the robot looks like he's kind of life-size there, pretty convincingly. And then in this shot, another try, but the focus was out, and this is trying different settings. So once you kind of find the settings that work, which is tough because your viewfinder often lies to you and you can only see it in the LCD screen, then you use those settings for similar manipulations of scale and space. So that's the first one I have that I think is pretty successful. And the problem my camera has is everything is really going to be kind of small. So I need kind of big toys to show this off. Let's see, what are some of the others I tried? So I'm just going to open them up in preview and look at them all. So we had Shane jumping out of the Doritos bag, but sadly, I think the focus is maybe a little blurry on that because it was too close to my camera still. So here, you can see that the foreground is still too fuzzy, even though I'm focused on the background. I was just too close to the Doritos bag. And here I zoomed in all the way and I lined it up really well, but then the focus still isn't pulling right. And in order to fix it, I just need to be further away from the Doritos bag, at least 10 feet. But when I do that, the closest I can zoom is even smaller than this. This one worked pretty well. Shows the dragon kind of lined up on the overhang, looking down at these students passing underneath. Tried lining this up a variety of ways, using manual focus settings. Notice as I get further away, the focus becomes a little bit sharper and clearer. But my alignment gets a little bit off. So let me see, what's the best of these exposures? I'm going to say this one because it has a guy that's kind of looking up, and so that might sell the illusion a little bit. So that's why you have to take a lot and kind of choose your best one. So that's 1508. So that will be my second exposure. That one would have been great, but again, shooting students, actually it's not too great because it doesn't line up on the feet, but the focus isn't there. Focus isn't there. Just taking lots of shots and then trying it out. This one I kind of liked. The robot just lounging on the library building. This one works pretty well for focus. Yeah, this might be the best one. Though it's not the most exciting shot. Trying to use my hand, which my camera is not that equipped to do with anything within 4 feet of the lens. It tends to treat it in macro in a slightly different focus. It also doesn't help that my hand was in shadow. So then I moved to where my hand wasn't in shadow and tried some things. Pinching people, grabbing her, but my hand's still too out of focus. That's a nice angle, nice and imposing, and the focus is kind of equally blurry everywhere, but that's not really what we want either. But that kind of works. Can't really tell that one is in the foreground and the rest is in the background. I just wish the focus was better. And that's the danger of manual focus. Actually, I like that one. Again, it looks like someone's looking up. So acting sells these. Then we have the dancers. And they line up really well, but the focus is a little blurry in the foreground. And that's already making them pretty small in the frame. Let's see what the best one is of those. Yeah, that one's pretty good. I should have just focused a little bit more on Cassidy as opposed to the background. All right. And then these, sure enough, I can make the big robot small, but it doesn't make for a very imposing photograph. So I think I've got my 3 in here, my potential for 3. I'm going to open them up with Photoshop, and we're just going to do some quick processing. Now this one's probably the least dramatic, though I like the concept of it, and there's so much empty space that I don't want to look at that's the one I'm not going to use. This one I think I like a lot. I like kind of the upshot of it. I like that the focus is pretty strong, the colors are pretty strong. It's really, the reason the focus worked out better in this one than the other ones is the light is so direct on it that I was able to use a much more stopped down aperture and still have enough light because the sun was directly on this. And then these. Okay. So how should I process? Well, I'm going to use the same sort of tricks we did for architecture just to make them look like more intentional shots. I don't want people paying attention to anything other than the figurative elements. So I want to make sure that my horizontal sight line is actually horizontal. So I'm going to Command T to free transform it, and I'm going to skew it. I'm just going to tug out and tug down to make the horizontals horizontal, right? Hit return, make a duplicate of that, Command J, Command T. Now I'm going to try to make the verticals vertical, just so they don't distract. So especially that building's vertical there. I'm going to use distort. Which allows me to tug up and out at the same time to get that building to be more vertical. All right. So the difference from this to this, right? Now if he looks a little too skinny, then I can simply do a Command T and stretch it out a little bit more. A little wider. Remember, the goal is to use the native format of our camera. So I can stretch it kind of like this, play with the composition a little bit, put him on a third line, as long as I'm using the native format of my camera to kind of focus on the effects I want. Still not quite vertical. The lampposts are pretty close, but that building just isn't quite. So let me just tug at it a little bit more with skew. There we go. All right, so started with this, ended with this, right? But the shot is all about the exposure and lining up that shot. So if I were to put this up online, eBay, life-size robot statue for sale, they might buy it. You know, we'll see. If I didn't have the person in there, I could say it was as tall as a lamppost, maybe, or as tall as a tree. All right. Next. Let me save that. I'll call that Carl Scale 1 to the desktop as a PSD. Now this one, my vertical is actually pretty lined up there. Make a duplicate of it. I wanted to show the clock tower. So now I'm going to play with my other verticals. Try to line them all up. So use skew. Sure enough, that lines up all my verticals. Hit return. Now I want to work on the horizontals here, so it really looks like he's just lounging. Make a duplicate, transform. Let's try skew this way. Oh, not skew, let's try distort, so I can keep my verticals. There we go. And play with those horizontals. And even while you're in the middle of the transformation, you can bring guides down and work with them. That can be pretty helpful. And you're always pulling away, right? It's like rolling dough. Okay. Not too bad. Call that Carl Scale 2. Finally, this one, which has everything just a little blurry, but it's all equally blurry. So it feels like everything's on the same plane. I just wish it was a little less blurry. First, I'll use skew to get my horizontals back. Always by tugging away. And that helps make some of these zoom shots look a little bigger as well. All right, and now duplicate that, Command J. Try to get my verticals. Now the reason this is often needed is because you're so focused when you're lining up your shot on getting the right, ground alignment and feet alignment. You're not really aware of how the buildings are aligned. And so we're using those architectural skills to make these shots focus on what we want them to focus on and not get wrapped up in the weird angles. Yeah, all of that works pretty well. Now notice the shadows of the people, the shadows of the robot, they all line up pretty well. They don't distract, they don't give away that they're at very different distances from each other. I have this tangency right at the edge, it's a little busy, so I'm just going to grow everything a little bit off to the side, like so. Going to check my horizontal one more time. Can be tugged up just a little bit here. Yeah. Good. All right.